Everyone sees the massive aircraft carriers slicing across the ocean like floating cities, launching fighter jets into the sky, projecting power thousands of miles from home. But what most people never ask is the question that reveals the real story. How do the thousands of men and women on board actually live out there? How do they eat, sleep, work, sweat, and survive for months at sea, far away from land, sunlight, comfort, or privacy? What keeps them sane? What keeps them alive? And what happens when the waves rise, the metal groans, and the world outside the hull is nothing but endless black water? Today we're going deep into the hidden world inside an aircraft carrier, the world the cameras almost never show, where life is hard, sleep is rare, and every heartbeat is synchronized with the mission. But before we get too deep into the guts of this steel giant, let me ask you something for the comments. If you think life on a carrier is glamorous or exciting, type yes. If you believe it's brutal, claustrophobic, and mentally exhausting, type no. I'll be reading the answers. Now let's open the hatch and step inside the world few civilians ever experience.
The moment you enter a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, the first thing that shocks you is the noise. It's constant, metallic, vibrating through the walls, through the floor beneath your boots, into your bones. Even when the jets aren't launching, the ship hums like a living creature. Pumps pounding, engines roaring far below, ventilation systems rattling through steel passageways. And no matter where you go, you feel it. This is not a hotel, not a cruise ship, not a workplace. It's a machine designed for war, and everything inside exists for one purpose: to keep 5,000 people alive in a place humans were never meant to survive. Let's start with the most basic human need: sleep. On land, you pick your bed, your mattress, your room temperature. On a carrier, you sleep wherever the Navy tells you to, and you get used to it or you break. Most sailors live in berthing compartments, long metal rooms packed with triple-stocked bunk beds called racks. Each rack is barely big enough to crawl into. You can't even sit up straight. The ceiling is inches from your face. You have one little privacy curtain, a thin mattress, a reading light, and a tiny compartment under the bed for your entire life's belongings. The smell is a mix of detergent, metal, sweat, and boots that haven't fully dried since last week. And if you're unlucky enough to be stationed below the flight deck, good luck sleeping through the sound of jets slamming into the carrier during night traps, or catapults launching 40 tons of metal into the sky every 45 seconds. People say you never get used to it, but the truth is you don't have a choice. You adapt or you collapse.
And sleep doesn't come when you want it. You sleep when your schedule allows. Some sailors work 18-hour days, running equipment, fueling aircraft, manning the radar rooms, cooking meals, or standing watch at stations even at 3 a.m. On a carrier, time becomes meaningless. Day and night disappear. The ship doesn't care what your body wants. You sleep in fragments. 90 minutes here, 45 minutes there, a short nap squeezed between a flight operation and a maintenance cycle. And when you drag yourself back to your rack, every muscle aching, the moment you lay down, someone opens the door, footsteps clang on the steel floor, an announcement screams through the intercom, "The forecastle is secured." Repeat, "The forecastle is secured." Lights flash, someone snores, someone coughs, someone's alarm goes off. You turn over and try again.
Now let's talk about food, because on a ship that runs non-stop, food isn't just fuel. It's morale, survival, sanity. The galley runs like a factory, feeding thousands of people 3 or 4 times a day. Cooks start at 3 a.m. They never stop. Picture industrial-sized kitchens full of steam, boiling water, trays of eggs, mountains of rice, giant vats of stew that could feed an entire town. Meals on board are fast, loud, crowded, and simple. You don't eat alone. You eat elbow to elbow with dozens of people crammed into a narrow compartment, sliding trays down stainless steel rails, grabbing food that disappears minutes after it's prepared. Some days you get steak, chicken wings, tacos, or pizza. Other days you get whatever survived the week of operations. You don't complain. You just shovel it down and move on because you're already late for your next watch or briefing. Sailors joke that coffee is the unofficial fuel of the Navy because caffeine is the closest thing to sleep many of them get.
But eating isn't the hard part. The hard part is staying mentally alive. When you're trapped inside a steel box for months, with no fresh air unless you're topside, no nature, no sunlight except for a harsh light on the flight deck, everything becomes routine. Days blur, weeks blur, your sense of self shrinks. You miss birthdays, holidays, your kids' first steps, your family calling and asking when you'll come home. You stare at the same walls, the same faces, the same narrow passageways. You hear the same alarms and walk the same ladder wells every day until your legs memorize the angles. The psychological strain is real. And yet people endure it. They laugh, joke, hit the gym, watch movies when they can, play cards, stare at the ocean during their rare moments outside. Routine becomes survival.
But let's go deeper. What do sailors actually do with their days? The truth is, everything. The carrier is a floating city, and someone has to keep every part running. Engineers in the bowels of the ship monitor the nuclear reactors that produce enough power to light a small town. Aviation mechanics crawl under jets, fixing hydraulic lines and changing tires the size of small cars. Ordnance crews roll bombs along the red-striped corridor, checking fuses, loading missiles onto elevators that lift the weapons up to the flight deck. The air traffic controllers in the tower talk dozens of pilots through chaotic launches. The radar teams in the Combat Information Center track threats on screens, glowing blue in complete darkness. Fire control teams stand ready at all hours because a fire on a ship, especially near jet fuel, is death. And then there's the flight deck, the most dangerous workplace on Earth. If you stand up there for even a minute, you understand the violence this ship creates. The wind is blasting, the sea sprays your face, and the entire deck trembles as jets ignite afterburners. People run inches from death. Spinning propellers, jet intakes that can suck a person inside, arresting wires that snap with enough force to cut a human in half. Yellow shirts guide aircraft, green shirts operate catapults, red shirts move weapons, blue shirts push aircraft with tow bars. Brown shirts care for individual jets like parents. White shirts supervise safety. Every color has a life or death purpose, and the teamwork is so precise it looks choreographed. Everyone trusts everyone because one mistake can kill a friend. Meanwhile, below the deck, life is the opposite. Quiet, cramped, fluorescent. People sit in windowless rooms staring at glowing screens, tracking contacts across the sea. Others repair pipes in engineering spaces hotter than a furnace. Some stand in line for showers, which have strict water limits because everything on board has to be managed. You shower fast, soap fast, rinse fast. Laundry takes hours. Shaving becomes mechanical. Privacy does not exist, and personal space is something you left behind when you boarded the ship.
What about emergencies? Sailors train constantly. Fire drills, flooding drills, man overboard drills, chemical attacks, missile defense drills. At any second, a missile could be detected, alarms could blare, everyone could sprint to battle stations wearing gas masks. The ocean gives no second chances. A fire in a compartment with fuel tanks nearby? Catastrophic. Flooding from a rogue wave? Deadly. A pilot missing on approach? Everyone freezes, waiting for a call that either ends in relief or tragedy. But here's the interesting part. Despite the stress, the lack of privacy, the exhaustion, and the constant noise, morale doesn't collapse. The reason is simple: purpose. Everyone on board knows they are part of something massive, something that projects power, protects allies, stabilizes regions, and keeps nations safe. You aren't just a cook. You're feeding the people who launch jets, defending the ship. You aren't just an engineer. You're keeping the entire carrier moving through hostile seas. You aren't just a sailor. You're the beating heart of a billion-dollar war machine that the whole world watches. And when the ship finally returns home after months at sea, the feeling is indescribable. The moment the coastline appears, people rush to the railings. Phones come alive. Families stand waiting on the pier.
Children hold signs. Husbands and wives search for familiar faces. The noise of jets is replaced with the noise of celebration. The smell of steel is replaced by the smell of land. The ship feels like it exhales. The sailors step onto solid ground, and for the first time in months, the horizon doesn't move.
But every sailor knows something the outside world doesn't. The carrier changes you. It teaches discipline, resilience, teamwork, and sacrifice. You learn to function with no sleep, to live with strangers, to trust people whose lives depend on your decisions. You learn that comfort is temporary, but duty is constant. And when the next deployment comes, you pack your sea bag, hug your family, walk up the gangway, and begin the cycle again. Because the mission continues, and someone has to stand watch in the middle of the ocean. That is how aircraft carrier crews eat, sleep, work, fight, and survive for months at sea. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. It's a life of sacrifice most people will never understand. But the truth is simple. Without these sailors, the jets don't launch, the missions don't happen, and the carrier doesn't move an inch. They are the backbone, the bloodstream, the heartbeat of the most powerful ships ever built. Their life is hard, their duty is relentless, and their endurance is the reason these floating giants dominate the oceans.